So what have you been watching?
We can start with the First Omen.
Mm.
Actually, it's when films have this tendency of releasing two of the same kind of films together. So you had like Deep Impact and Armageddon, Volcano and Dante's Peak, those kind of things. Well, we had Immaculate a few weeks ago, the Sydney Sweeney film about a nun that is possession and the devil, etc. And then the First Omen, which is about a nun, possession and the devil, etc. So two of exactly the same kind of films. So on my little list that I've wrote down, I've sort of like grouped them both together because they are pretty much the same thing. Immaculate Sydney Sweeney, she goes off to this convent in the middle of Italy in the hills, and bad things start to happen. And in the First Omen, it's a prequel to the Omen, and it is just about a nun coming from America to a convent to where there's a lot of abandoned children, etc. She strikes up a relationship with one of the children who's sort of like pushed to the background because people see her as being weird and very strange, and then starts to uncover a very nasty truth. You know how the Omen starts. It doesn't sort of like, the annoying thing is with the First Omen, it does something in the First Omen which does not make any sense whatsoever. Considering it's a prequel, you would expect it to lead into the Omen, but it does something which makes absolutely zero sense, which makes you think, has the director actually seen the Omen?
Are you able to say what that thing is, or is that would that be like a huge spoiler?
Spoiler. It's a spoiler for the film.
That was going to be my question. How much does it tie into the First Omen? You know, the Richard Donner one. Does it tie in nicely to it?
It does for the most part, but then it does that little thing that some prequels have a bad habit of doing, especially if the prequel has been released a good few decades after the original film, that it does follow a sort of like, you think, oh, actually, I know where this is going. I know where this is going. It's going to set it up for the first film to actually take over the baton. But then it does something that does not make sense. So when you see it, you will instantly spot it because there's something that's mentioned in the Omen that should be set up in the First Omen, but it isn't. And so you go, okay, that doesn't make sense considering I know how this thing happens. But for the most part, though, it's not too bad. It's shot really nicely. It's got a good direction to it. It's a directorial debut. So it's got a good direction to it. The directive sort of like gets horror. It does the usual quiet bang a few times.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's not too bad. I wish it would have felt like its own film leading up to the Omen, rather than sort of like going, well, we have to actually build up to the Omen. Do something a little bit different rather than just doing the things that we've seen before. Because Immaculate, like I said, came out a few weeks prior to it, and it has the same setup. And you can think, oh, well, the First Omen copied Immaculate and vice versa. Maybe Immaculate was an idea that was floating around in Sydney Sweeney's head for 10 years. She originally wanted to set in Ireland, in a convent in Ireland, but then because the film didn't get a distributor and nobody was interested, over the years when she was trying to get somebody to actually latch onto the movie, she just went, we need to change things. We need to evolve it. So that's how that film came to be. But I think out of the two, Immaculate is the slightly better one because you don't have a first one to fall on.
Yeah.
So Immaculate is able to actually be its own film. So it's the better out of the two. But if you're looking for a double bill of possession films, then they're actually a pretty decent double bill.
Okay. I was going to ask that. Do they work if you did watch them back to back, or are they that so similar that you'd be like, I've kind of just watched this film an hour and a half ago?
You will get deja vu.
Yeah.
But there are scenes in Immaculate that the First Omen doesn't do. So it will feel different enough. But it's like if you did sit down and watch Volcano and Dante's Peak, they sort of like have those exact themes running alongside each other, but they feel different enough. The same with Armageddon, etc. So yeah. I would say, yeah, it's a good double bill. If you can get to the cinema and you're looking for a Sunday kind of possession double bill that you want to see, or wait for them to come out on streaming, then you can't do any worse than Immaculate and the First Omen.
I think for me, I'm more excited about watching the First Omen because I like the Omen franchise, and by that I mean the first three. I pretend there aren't any more films after the first three. Sam Neill did the last one, and then that was it. There was no more. There was no Omen 4. There was no remake. Let's forget about them. They were not
It's
good.
nowhere near as bad as the remake. The remake is awful. It's just a completely misstep of a film because it doesn't get the Omen at all. It doesn't get the feel of the Omen. It felt like when they did those Exorcist movies.
Yeah.
Those two Exorcist movies, sort of like side by side, it felt like that. So it's nowhere near as bad as that. It's sort of like up there with the Omen, actually, in terms of quality. So yeah, I recommend it.
I will check them out. Brilliant.